Since the end of the Cold War, the White House has not witnessed such a gathering of European leaders.
Hello, everybody.
They pose for a photograph, knowing that their discussions will shape Europe's security and Ukraine's very viability. In the East Room, there was an extraordinary glimpse into high-stakes diplomacy in real time.
We're all working for the same goal, very simple goal. We want to stop the killing.
As Trump explained, the US would now provide support to a European stabilizing force if a peace deal emerges.
In a very significant step, President Putin agreed that Russia would accept security guarantees for Ukraine, and this is one of the key points that we need to consider. I think that the European nations are going to take a lot of the burden. We're going to help them, and we're going to make it very secure. We also need to discuss the possible exchanges of territory, taking into consideration the current line of contact. That means the war zone, the war lines. We're going to try and get a three-party meeting, maybe as soon as we can. And I have a feeling you and President Putin are going to work something out.
Behind the scenes, Trump and Zelensky discussed some of the most sensitive issues in front of a map of Ukraine. And Zelensky, treading with immense care, said these new US security guarantees are a significant advance.
All of us want to finish this war, stop Russia and stop this war. We spoke about it, and we will speak more about security guarantees. This is very important that the United States gives such strong signal and is ready for security guarantees.
I think you'll see that President Putin really would like to do something else. I think when we set that up, when we do, I think it's going to be when, not if. I think you're going to see some really positive moves.
Europe's leaders blended praise for Trump's role with pleas for an immediate end to the fighting while negotiations continue.
The next steps ahead are the more complicated ones now. The path is open. You opened it last Friday. But now the way is open for complicated negotiations. And to be honest, we all would like to see a ceasefire.
So you can count on us as we can count on you in order to deliver this robust peace for both Ukraine and Europe.
And your indication of security guarantees, of some sort of Article 5 style guarantees, fits with what we've been doing with the Coalition of the Willing, which we started some months ago, bringing countries together and showing that we were prepared to step up to the plate when it came to security. With you coming alongside, the US alongside what we've already developed, I think we could take a really important step forward today, a historic step, actually.
But amid all of this talk, the fighting in eastern Ukraine continues. Overnight, Russia firing rockets at Ukrainian positions and launching drones that struck apartment buildings with multiple fatalities. Amid such scenes, if Ukraine is to surrender land to the Russian invaders, it will be a moment of enormous national anguish. What remains unknown is whether Trump accurately read President Putin's motives and intentions when they met at that US airbase in Alaska. Is Russia prepared to make significant compromises, or is Putin sticking to his maximalist demands, including seizing the entire Donbass region? But back in Washington, there is now the sense that the contours of a peace deal are at least visible.
I think in the past 2 weeks, we've probably had more progress in ending this war than we have in the past 3.5 years. And I think the fact that we're around this table today is very much symbolic in the sense that it's Team Europe and Team United States helping Ukraine.
Towards the end, Trump, probably to the astonishment of others around the table, said he thought that Putin was also invested in a deal that would end the war.
I really do believe, I've known him for a long time. I've always had a great relationship with him. I think that President Putin wants to find an answer too. And we'll see. And in a certain period of time, not very far from now, a week or 2 weeks, we're going to know whether or not we're going to solve this, or is this horrible fighting going to continue. We'll do our best to get it ended. Thank you very much for being here.
This has been an astonishing day of diplomacy in Washington.
I love the Ukrainian people, but I love all people. I love the Russian people. I love them all.
Thankfully, there was no ambush like we witnessed in the Oval Office 6 months ago. Indeed, this time Zelensky was wearing a jacket, not military-style clothing like last time, leading to this good-natured exchange.
First of all, Mr. President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks
Isn't
good
that
on
nice?
you.
That's the one that attacked you last time. See, now I remember that.
Yeah, I apologize to you. You look wonderful. No, my first question for you, President Zelensky.
In the same suit. You see, I changed, you are not.
But beyond this humour, many will worry that Russia is being rewarded for aggression. And others will ask whether the winner today is watching these scenes smiling from inside the Kremlin. Robert Moore, News at 10, Washington.
And Dan is outside the White House now. Dan, President Trump has obviously just spoken to President Putin and appears to have gone back to European leaders. Have we got any sense of what that call was about? And can I ask you more broadly? Obviously, you report from Washington now, but you know the front line of Ukraine pretty well. You've reported on there from the start of the war and often since. Do you think there is a, whatever you want to call it, a land deal that can be done on the ground that President Putin's and Zelensky could both accept, or is that a stretch in your view?
Well, firstly, on the call to Putin, I mean, the White House are neither confirming nor denying the call took place, but it's been reported by a German newspaper that it did take place, that President Trump broke off talks with the European leaders to call Vladimir Putin. It would have been almost midnight in Moscow. We don't know the contents of that call or how it went. It might be significant that although the meeting, we're told, has finished with the European leaders, they are still inside the White House, and some suggestion that the discussions are carrying on in a different format. So that might give rise to speculation. Perhaps there's some fruitful discussions going on, that they're getting down to the nitty-gritty. In terms of the territory, I think one of the kind of problems is the bit of the Donbass that Ukraine still controls has some very strategically important towns in it, like Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, which are kind of fortresses, military hubs, which I think Ukraine would be very keen to hang on to because they're really all that stands between the Russian forces to their east and hundreds of miles of open agricultural land. So I think that's potentially going to be a sticking point. But I think also Zelensky potentially has come out of this quite well, avoiding the trap that was set by President Putin. He said in Alaska to Donald Trump that he'd be willing to take all of the Donbass in return for allowing some security guarantees for Ukraine, knowing that was a red line really for Zelensky. Zelensky hasn't risen to the bait, as it were, here. I think he wanted to avoid, and the European leaders wanted to avoid, Zelensky being seen as a kind of roadblock to peace. And I think so far he's successfully pulled that off. None of the fireworks that we saw in February, warm handshakes all around. So far from President Zelensky's point of view, this has gone fairly well.
Dan, thank you very much for now. And Rohit, our global security editor, is here. You've also reported very frequently from Ukraine and know the ground well. You know how important, how vulnerable Ukrainians feel still and would feel even after a peace deal. So security guarantees are critical. What do you make of where we've got to on that and the general tenor of today?
Well, I mean, the general tenor of today was obviously extremely positive, particularly compared to what happened in February when Volodymyr Zelensky was last in the Oval Office. You know, the European leaders, one by one, kind of unleashed this like avalanche of adulation for President Trump. But in it all, it could be missed that actually there's a lot of detail that was missing there. They talk about security guarantees, and actually one by one, the European leaders used this phrase of Article 5-like guarantees. Now, we know what Article 5 is. That's the clause in the NATO Charter, which says an attack against one is an attack against all. And much like after 9/11, it would require other NATO members to protect Ukraine if it were attacked. But what does Article 5-like mean? I think the European leaders were employing this sort of strategy of strategic vagueness. They were using a phrase that was used just yesterday on TV by Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's envoy, who used this and offered very little detail. And so, yeah, they've managed to get him to agree to this without being clear on exactly what it is. But the Russians have already said this evening that they would reject any scenario which involved NATO contingents being inside Ukraine. And so perhaps we're now 2 steps back. And also sirens across eastern Ukraine tonight, reports of missile and drone launches. So perhaps 3 steps back.